Presented by GhostBed.com. Welcome to Drinkin, Bros. Kids, from time to time, occasionally, we talk about who we hate in office.
Yeah.
There's a handful of names that keep popping up over and over and over again. One of them is Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
Today on the show, we have the man who's going to bring her down, Royce White. Royce, how are you?
I'm good, man. Good to see you. Good to be here.
Good to have you, my man. First of all, I know you went to University of Minnesota, but I didn't know you lived in the district.
Iowa State.
You went to Iowa State?
Yeah. I went to University of Minnesota first, and I transferred to Iowa State.
Boom. Yeah. Don't ever correct me like that, son.
Everybody knows him from Iowa State.
I don't. Which I know you from. I'm an Ohio State guy.
We don't recognize Iowa as a real place on
at
the
all.
Show. I don't believe it's real. We call it the land of make-believe.
Call it the land. So look, but so is America right now. That's what I feel like, unless we take it back. With Ilhan Omar, you live in the district in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised here, and I live in Hopkins, which is pretty much on the border. They did a redistricting, and I'm not sure if I make the cut into the district, but whether or not it's not required that you live in the district anyway. I was raised in the North Minneapolis neighborhood, so I'm firmly in the district when it comes to my upbringing and childhood and things.
Gotcha, yeah, because everybody grills you on that. We had a mutual friend of ours run, and they grilled him about living in the district and why that's important versus not being important and everything else.
Well, he lives on the border of the district, and that's where he grew up. She came from somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I was, my family's been in the Twin Cities is unique, right? Because St. Paul and Minneapolis are so close together. It's why we call it the Twin Cities, and the river splits them. But I grew up all across the Twin Cities, and partly because I was raised in a household with a single mother. She worked in different places around the city, and I had family that was spread throughout the city. We're a 5-generation family here in Minnesota. So, we have deep roots, and people spread out and move all over the place. But I went to De La Salle High School, which is downtown Minneapolis, and that's the heart of the 5th district. So.
Yeah, and they've got a great basketball team. Wink.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Let me ask you this: the last challenger that went up against her, she smoked. I mean, it was not close. I believe it was 66% of the vote she ended up getting. Is there a lot of Somalians in that district, and is that what you're up against?
Well, we have the largest Somali immigrant community in America. So the Twin Cities, some of that St. Paul, much of it is Minneapolis. But I think that contributes to it. But the district's been blue since well before the Somali immigrant wave, right? The district's been a Democratic district since 1963, 64, something like that. So we got much bigger problems than the Somali immigrant portion of this thing. We have an ideological crisis in our district.
No, I 100% agree, but it's one of those things. We're looking at the last election in 2020. A lot of people brought that up of how do you beat her when there is so many Somali people that
but
live there.
It's not, if you look at the numbers, it's not that large a portion of the people that are there. It's 62% white still, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a whole lot of white people in Somalia. I haven't personally been there, but shit. But I think it's just like this fucking, these dumb woke white liberals.
Yeah, because that's what I can't figure out then. Who is actually going to vote for her? It doesn't make sense to me, Royce. And like when you sit down with the people on your staff and you look at a strategy for how to beat her, because I didn't know that. We know very little about Minnesota. But when you see these numbers and the voter turnout for her, it's shocking to me. And especially, Dan, you said, what, 62% of the district is white?
62% white, 17% black, and then about 6% Asian.
So how is she getting these votes in the first place?
Well, I think there's just a blind faith support of the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party has used diversity, equity, and inclusion, the history of Black people, and whether it be slavery or segregation, the plight or the fight of the LGBTQ community, the church of LGBTQ, as I like to call it, and the feminist movement, and just molded it all together to create a sort of, blind faith support of Democrats in the district, and it's in liberal states. So, I think that the community I come from, at least, the Black community here in the Twin Cities, has certainly been one that votes Democrat faithfully, and they've been tricked. They've been lied to. They have been convinced to vote against their own interests, as well as purchase against their own interests. So we have a few problems, when it comes to the Black community here in Minneapolis or in the Twin Cities. But we've just been lied to, and we've gone for it. We've just been gullible. That's all.
Well, we had, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but we had the Hodge Twins on a couple weeks ago. They're pretty outspoken Southern Black Republicans, I guess, or conservatives. I wouldn't call them Republicans, but we asked them the same question that I ask any of my reasonable Black friends, which is, what the fuck has the Democratic Party ever done for you? Ever? Yeah. What have leftists ever done for you other than use you to get what they want? Politically,
yeah.
And their response was that it's not political with the Black community; it's cultural, right?
It's cultural. Yeah, we are cultural Democrats.
Mm-hmm. I think I heard you talk on Whitlock about this a little bit, but explain some of that shit to our viewer base, who is predominantly white, because I don't think white people.
Yeah.
They keep trying to hey man, you shouldn't be voting for these people are crazy, and the Black people keep voting for them, and I don't think white people understand what's happening there. So can you explain, elucidate some of that?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit that you have to pull apart. I'll use myself as an example because I think that's the easiest way to do it. I was pretty apolitical growing up. I didn't affiliate with either party. I see the pitfalls of both parties, and there is a real rhino neocon party problem in the Republican Party. But I was apolitical, and when I came onto the scene, into the public conversation, my worldview, because I was an early advocate of mental health and saying that the human psychology is the real issue and where we need to focus our energy, I thought that the human psychology was so much deeper than the political that I didn't even need to deal with the political, right? And in doing so, I didn't realize that, when I was doing interviews, for example, you could go back and listen to my interviews from 2013, even as recent as 2018, 17, and I was doing a voice, right? I was doing a voice that was trying to pander to a liberal spirit, right? And I think that subconsciously, or just in our intuition, a lot of Black people have this feeling that they can either resign from politics altogether, or in order to be successful in a culture where the liberal political party has established such a stronghold on mainstream culture, that we sort of have to pander to whatever it is their desires and agenda is. And I think that's a huge part of it. I was roped into even being, against Trump at certain points in time over the past few years, because I was trying to pander, not in message, not on the details, but specifically the tone of my voice.
Right.
And so it took me to write my ideas down, get them ordered on paper chronologically, and really try and understand the scope of what's going on here in America. And what I realized was that the political and political ideology, when it's potent, has a profound impact on the psychological. So I was mistaken. Right. I kind of viewed myself as being above the fray of these political matters. And I don't know that that's the case for all Black people, but what I will say is that they view themselves as disconnected from the political process. I don't think many Black people in general believe that they have a real say in the political process in general. And so what the Democratic Party has been very wise to do is use racism as their calling card to just decry Republicans, out and out, and get whatever Black voting support there is. And they've done that through a number of mechanisms, whether it's the sexual politics, or they just go right down the pipe and say, hey, listen, whichever one of you Black guys is willing to sell out, we'll take you. Right. And that's how they like their Black men. They like them selling out. They like them gay. They like them trans. They like them dead, in trouble. and they have no desire to have competent, intellectual, Christian, heterosexual black men in their constituency.
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, like I try to take into account not just the tone and content of a message, but also, maybe the culture surrounding it, or maybe the intent behind it. But seeing what you're describing has happened over the last 40 years in this country, if not longer, but particularly in the last 40 years in my studies, and then seeing hyper successful black men like Clarence Thomas, for example, and the links that the leftists in this country have gone to try to tear that man down with no reason, no evidence that he's ever done anything wrong, right? So it's like, when Biden said that if you're not voting for me, you're not black, I think he meant exactly what he said. I don't think it was up for interpretation. Not only do I think he meant it, I think a lot of the black community probably were nodding their heads when he said it. You know what I mean? Because people get trapped. Like, this is our only way out. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks, but I feel like because black people have suffered under the thumb of oppression for so long, that there's a bit of it that they just assume is going to be there. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, it's going to suck a little bit. We just got to deal with that. But the Democrats at least bring up this bullshit sometimes. And I think that the fact that Charlotte.
Well, here's let me give another angle to it. The Democrats have invested on the surface commitment to black people, to the black community, as to where the Republicans are not willing to spend the time and energy to create this sort of marketing campaign that they're for black people, and what many black people miss because they don't have a very intimate knowledge of the process of policy, economics, law, and different things like that. They can't really see where Republican politics is actually beneficial to them. Right. So that's kind of the 3-card Monte that the Democratic Party has played. And there is some genuine racism too on the right. Like, we can't overlook that part, but it's nowhere near the calling card that Democrats have made it in order to garner such a faithful vote from the black community by any means. In fact, I'll even say this: what Joe Biden said was probably one of the most racist things that I've heard from a vice president, et cetera. And he took it a step further, though. Many people didn't hear this, but he had a conversation on a Zoom call with the Congressional Black Caucus, and he told the Black Caucus that that black people needed to go get with the Latinos because in a few years their population size was going to be bigger than ours. And I actually thought that was the most racist comment, because what he's basically saying is political capital is completely driven by population and the ability to be represented in an electorate through votes. But at the same time, they want black people to be open borders and pro-abortion.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, well,
those are the things that are, that's why the left is losing the Hispanic community. Like, the voting in 2020 shifted like a 40% overall shift from 2016 to 2020 with regard to Latinos in America voting for Republican candidates. Like a massive flip. And that's why. It's because, hey, we all came here the fucking right way and work hard and pay taxes and shit. And you're telling me that since January of this year, so far, 150,000 illegal immigrants have just been allowed to come into this country and do none of the shit that I had to do? And then they're deeply religious people. You start talking about all this crazy bullshit, right? The left of this country has gone completely out of their minds about so gender and all this other stuff.
Here's one more example of how the Democrats have been able to keep a stronghold on the black vote. The black community in America is very matriarchal. So when the white liberal feminist movement came into prominence, one of the very strategic things it did was go to black women and link the black feminist movement and the white feminist movement. And many black men in their community have gone along with liberal identity politics that they don't believe in their heart. And I know this because I come from a real black community. And when I say I come from a black community, it's not like I live in a neighborhood where black people live. I mean, like, I come from one of those real neighborhoods, a real hood. and I mean, you know, black men believe in marriage. We believe in family. We believe in hierarchy. We believe in meritocracy. We have an inclination towards the natural order, right? And partly is because we've had to accept the natural order out of survival. So, you know, we don't buy into all of this. You know, you could be a woman with a penis, or you could be a man and get pregnant, or any of those things. And so when I look at my community, the community I was raised in, the men that I was raised by, I've never been in the voting booth with them, but I have to really wonder why it is that we're voting Democrat, why we voted Democrat, number one, but why we would do it going forward, because we certainly don't believe in those things.
Right. Well, some of it's probably a reflection of just the larger view that most people in America have on politics, which is typically when you go to the voting booth, you're choosing the lesser of two evils. I don't remember, other than Obama in 2008, I don't remember the last time or any point in my lifetime where somebody went to the polls to vote for somebody and they were excited about it, especially not at the federal level.
Trump in 2016, that's the only way he won, in my opinion.
A lot of people, yeah, I guess. But I think a lot of Republicans, especially the establishment Republicans, kind of held their nose and voted for him because they hated Hillary Clinton so much.
Yes.
But it's rare that is the case. And it's always a populist. Typically when it happens, I think Obama was kind of an outlier because he was the first like legit black candidate for president, not like Jesse Jackson or some stupid shit like that.
There was also something electric about him, and I think
he's a good orator, yeah.
And it carried over. There was an electricity around those rallies with Trump as well. Bush, I could never.
Nobody gave a fuck about Bush. He won because all of the fucking American oligarchs that run the military-industrial complex made him win. That's the only reason he won.
Yeah,
for sure. Like, that guy's a fucking retard.
One of our listeners here, High and Angry, is saying black people are the most over-promised and under-delivered upon community, to the point where we all code switch to get in line and resign ourselves to being lumped into something not connected to us.
I mean, that's what the cultural politics thing is, though, right? Like, when you ask a black person to define their politics, I would imagine that quite a few of them start out with, we vote Democrat, and I doubt there's a whole lot of issues that the average person will bring up at the federal level. They care about what's going on at home. Like, they're not worried about the defense budget and all that other bullshit. In my experience, like, I've worked in politics in black communities quite a bit, and I've never heard them ask about that. They're asking about, how are you going to fucking get these criminals off of our fucking streets? That's what they care about typically. Like, at home. Like, what Royce is talking about. It's a community-based, it is a family-based community, right? It's almost more akin to the old native culture here in America, where all the dudes over 40 or 50, like, they'll slap the shit out of you if you're fucking up.
Yeah.
And the moms will slap. It's like, if there's an adult around, that adult is your de facto parent. And I think that's something that we've lost in this country, right? But it is something that's been leveraged.
We've lost that. Well, we've lost that in the black community too. And I think while you're talking, I thought of this as well. The social, and I think you're right. I think a lot of the issues, the real prominent issues, like, part of the reason why I'm running is because I know for a fact, after the George Floyd uprisings and having led protests, peaceful protests during that time, because I knew the mainstream media was gonna take that opportunity to hijack that moment and weaponize it and create another cultural three-card Monte. So I led a protest, for example, to the Federal Reserve. And when we got there, nobody knew what it was, right? Like, and so I think some of the white liberals that make up that sort of Black Lives Matter constituency know what it is, but even they don't know what it is. But I certainly know a lot of people in the black community have no clue what the Federal Reserve is, what central banking is. They don't know what globalism is. They don't know what the they don't know what the CCP is. You say the CCP to your average black person, they have no clue what that is. Yeah. And so what the Democrats have been smart in doing politically is they've erected a culture that's driven on superficial topic draws. And you could see how in that way, social media as an industry and as a cultural phenomenon helps promulgate the political strategy of the main driving force being sexual politics. And I said this to you the last time we talked, is that what the liberal agenda has done well to do, is hijack the status quo. And they want to keep it by creating an ever expanding middle. And the twin turbo engine is two very distinct cultural arguments. There's an ever expanding definition of gender, and there's an ever expanding definition of sexual misconduct. And if you're close to, fall in, know somebody who's close to or falls in, you have to be allegiant to the democratic movement. And I just reject that. All in all, I think the idea is racist. I think the connotation is racist. I really think that your people like Candace Owens, for example, who I think is a rising star and has a chance to be very transformative, but traditional Black Republicans have almost gone too far in saying that racism isn't a big issue. No, racism's a big issue. It's just neoliberal racism that's the most prominent, right? I think between the abortion crisis, the unwillingness to accept any Black men who have divergent political ideas, and the outright just dismissal of Black Republicans in general is a real racist animus.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was having this conversation with one of my buddies the other day. I'm like, what to the outside world, it probably seems, or at least to liberals, it probably seems more racist. And I'm talking to him here, that you and I make fun of each other because of the way we grew up, our different cultures, the way we look, the way we sound and talk, and all with the shit we believe, blah, blah, blah. That might seem racist to people. But you know what's really racist is telling Black people that they're not smart enough to figure out how to get a fucking ID to go vote. Like, what the fuck, dude? That's so much more, that's so much worse than even anything you could actually say that's racist, like something hateful. You know what I mean? Because hateful is just, that's ignorant and hate. That's what that is. But telling somebody that because of who you are, you're not capable of doing these things.
Now you're calling them stupid.
That's fucking fucked up.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And nobody seems to notice that shit.
I don't know if they don't notice or if they just don't care, because it doesn't feed into their narrative. By saying this, it automatically plants the seed in your mind that Republicans don't want you to go out and vote. They don't want you to do this. And it's like, that's not the case at all. Everybody can get an ID. It's super easy. It's been going on for years and years and years. And most Black people you talk to, it's like Dan said, everybody's like, no, what do you mean? I can't figure out how to get an ID. We all have an ID.
Yeah, we've done these man on the street interviews where some of our buddies will just walk up to go to like Harlem or fucking anywhere, really. South Chicago, James Klug went to, just saying, hey, you have ID, right? She goes, yeah. It's like an older Black lady that's elderly, one of the people that's in the class that the leftist media says can't get an ID. And he goes, hey, you got an ID, right? And she's like, yeah, sure do. Everybody I fucking know has an ID.
Yeah.
Because you need one for everything, man. What the fuck?
Yeah. Everything you do, you need an ID.
But you made the point earlier, Royce, Republicans suck at messaging. They always have. They suck at delivering their message. They have, and I think this is true of Trump as well with the Black community. They have the right answer to a lot of these questions. Maybe it's that they're independent-minded. Maybe it's lingering racism. I don't know. But they haven't explained to Black America that personal liberty and entrepreneurship are the solutions to all of these problems, right? Making your own money, divorcing yourself from government control, all this stuff is the solution to all of this. And that is the conservative answer to this question, by the way. But Republicans have never made that point. Not in my lifetime, in the last 40 years. Let me say this.
Yeah. The first thing you have to address is that we have developed a culture that moves much faster than any of us could have ever imagined, just in a day-to-day sense.
Yeah.
And it's my view that we lose that real sense of time very easy. And we're not so far removed from an America where this sort of open market capitalism was kept away from, wasn't handled fairly in regards to Black participation.
Oh yeah, just think about the GI Bill and the federally backed VA home loan in the early 1950s. So the reason that I've said this on the show before, the reason that HBCUs exist is because you could go serve in war like Jackie Robinson did, and a bunch of like fucking hundreds of thousands of Black dudes. You go serve in war, and technically, you qualify for a free college education, you qualify for a fucking federally backed home loan. But Jim Crow exists, and that college can tell you to go fuck yourself because you're black. And there's nothing saying they can't do it. That home loan guy, the bank, can tell you to go fuck yourself because you're black. The two pieces of legislation that built the middle class in this country were systematically kept away from the black community. And that's something that Republicans just refuse to address. They fucking refuse to address that shit.
But it's also that and this is where Malcolm X was very profound, although many people view him as an extremist and as a hateful person. What he actually tried to preach in the black community is that our focus should be ourselves, right? Our focus should be the things that we can do to improve our own communities and lives by being more together, being more for one another. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that at all. In fact, I think that the black community has really kept America down by not exhibiting some type of black nationalism, because black nationalism ultimately becomes American nationalism. And it's helpful when communities have a good sense of community.
Yeah. The attitude that we helped fucking build this country, so we deserve a piece of it, is a very good attitude to have. I don't think that's
absolutely. So I was just going to get to that.
Yeah.
Here's the most racist thing that Democrats have done. The most racist thing they've done is say the American dream is dead. America is dead. There is no more America. This is the managed decline. We have traded in the American dream for a global dream where you're going to be a global citizen. But at the same time, they make the claim, they run on the claim, they want allegiance based on the claim that black people weren't fairly compensated in the first iteration of the American dream. And there's a real subjugation to that. They're basically saying, hey, you know what? You missed out on the first American dream, but unilaterally, we're on to something bigger and better. So you just come along with us because we say we care about race. I mean, there's nothing more racist than that.
Yeah.
We don't have to give you an ounce. We don't have to give you an ounce of anything to have your allegiance. And what black people have to start to do in this country, whether they want to vote Democrat or Republican, that's not for me to say. They're American. They should choose, but they should choose based on the candidate, and they should choose based on what the candidate says they'll do and what candidates prove they'll do, whether that be individually or by party. And the Democrats have lied. That's just the bottom line.
But I think that's true of more than just the black community. I mean, there are people, there are still, I would say, probably a plurality, if not a majority of voters in this country just go right down the R or D line whenever they vote. Mm-hmm. I would say the majority of people probably do that. And that's fucking stupid. That is, how destructive is that? Especially for Republicans that believe in the free market, as they like to call it. If you believe in the free market works because of benefits and penalties. You do the right thing, the market benefits you. You do the wrong thing, the market penalizes you. The market is all of you, your vote, your dollar. That's how that fucking works, right? And if you give people the benefit of the doubt after they have time and time again proven that they don't give a fuck about you, then you're breaking the free market system that you're clinging to, right? You're that guy riding on a bicycle, jamming a fucking stick into the spokes, flipping over the handlebars, and then looking around like, I don't know what happened. You happened, bitch.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, it's crazy. With you, I want to switch gears here for a second. You got the endorsements from Steve Bannon, who, you know, the media has painted out as probably the biggest white supremacist there is, which, you know, obviously isn't true. Has there been any backlash from the black community about that?
Well, you know, there's two black communities, right? There's the real working class, everyday, family-driven black community. And then there are the fake woke, far leftist, Church of LGBTQ, diversity, inclusion, equity black community. And they're a minority, but they're a loud minority. I mean, I'm getting backlash from them already this morning. But, you know, the one thing that has happened, I think, and this is, and you made a great point about politics as a whole. I think that our politicians, that the permanent political class is a corrupt entity. There's a corrupt culture there. So they have often been able to run campaigns get through elections, and then pick other candidates and run other candidates that give false promises and see no penalty for that. And I think that's because there's a real corporatocracy, which is part of the reason why we went to the Fed. You know, the Congress is supposed to give their orders. It's supposed to be what dictates the Fed. Now, the Fed actually is privately owned, and it's kind of a wink and nod that we say the Congress tells the Fed what to do, but really the Fed does what the corporatocracy does, because the Congress has to go to the corporatocracy to get the money to run their campaigns, and the corporate interests tell us what to do. And I think that problem is for the American citizen to understand and to find the courage to really decide what their citizenship is worth. And I say all of that to say, I'm just a different type of fucking candidate, man. Right? I just got a set of fucking balls on me that just, you know, they're just unique for this political arena. And that's part of the reason why I think Steve Bannon has taken a liking to me. It's part of the reason why he is taking the time out to mentor me on some of these issues, because I think he sees a future where leaders are going to have to step up within their own community and challenge their own community to the social norms that they've been brainwashed into. And that's me in the Black community. I mean, you're not going to tell me that we're having a conversation right now in America with sexual politics about consent, and every woman who steps out into the streets in America is a 1 in 3 potential victim of rape. And at the same time, tell me that it's perfectly okay for a teacher or any adult at a school to have a conversation with my child about their genitals without my consent. Right? I mean, these are contradictory politics to the highest degree. And it just doesn't bother me for any they, them, theirs, Z, Zim, Zer, Black folks to be trying to tell me that I'm a sellout or alt-right or a blackface for white supremacy or any of that shit. I'll slap the shit out of somebody for saying that. And they know that. So they're a little slow and judicious with their criticism anyway. And I think we need to go to a smash mouth political arena in order to turn this thing around. And part of my problem with the GOP, as I watch it from afar, is that the GOP has this thin veil of civility, right? They have this thin veil of their Christian allegiance that says God will sort it out in the end. Jesus is coming back. And all of those are true, but we don't know when that'll be exactly. And we can't use that as an excuse not to fight a righteous and divine war. And that's what's necessary right now. We have to really fight the left because, I mean, they're coming and they're not shy about it. And we're kind of sitting back. Some people laugh and they mock them and they point out all the logical fallacies. But these people are ready for war and they'll use the courts. They tried to use the courts against Steve Bannon. I wrote a letter to Congress 3 months ago saying that these are kangaroo courts, right? And when you get to that point where you have those politically motivated kangaroo courts, I mean, you're in the throes of tyranny. It's time to get ready for a real war.
Yeah, we're there. I mean, it's one side of the aisle seems to be intent, and it's not just in the United States, by the way. And I'm not sure it's even left versus right necessarily. There's one side that refers to themselves as global citizens, right? Like these World Economic Forum motherfuckers. Mm-hmm. Like you refer to yourself as a global citizen, and then when we bring up globalism as a bad thing, you say that that's a conspiracy theory. When you say that the Great Reset from WF is a conspiracy theory, motherfucker, Klaus Schwab wrote a book called The Great Reset. That's the name of the fucking book. Right. You know what I mean? And all of the stuff that they want to do is elucidated in there. I guess maybe we should have paid attention to Alex Jones a lot sooner, I guess. Yeah,
everybody. Alex was right. Yeah. When they say the Great Reset, right, and they say you'll be happy but own nothing, this is something that American citizens should really take offense to, right? This is something free people everywhere should take offense to, because all they're saying is they're going to make the high so good that you don't really care that you're getting fucked.
Sounds a lot like Soma, doesn't it? I've read that book. Fuck that shit. Yeah, that's just feudalism. That's what it is. Like wardens or governors own whatever the fucking land you're on. And it's going to be corporate feudalism, basically, right?
And to your point about Steve Bannon, I really respect Steve Bannon. I think he's one of the top-notch minds of our time, definitely when it comes to politics. And he called this out. You know, right before the pandemic started, there was still a lot of talk about Donald Trump, and the PBS did this series called The Great Divide. And in that, he's probably the person who really started to move me on Donald Trump. In the beginning, first of all, when Donald Trump came on the scene, the things he was saying let me know that he was a different candidate. And I appreciated that he was willing to call out the contradictions in the establishment. And then when I saw the mainstream media panic, I knew that he was onto something, but I still found myself roped in sometimes to the caricature that was painted, because I was a tacit spectator of the political arena, even myself, which is how I know there's a huge swath of American citizens out there who only tacitly pay attention to the politics. They're headline readers, right? And the mainstream, the media industrial complex knows that a lot of citizens are headline readers, which is why if you're in any political campaign, the traditional practice is that if you write anything, you have to write it so a fifth grader can read it. Yeah, that's because people aren't paying close enough attention. But I say that to say I still got roped in. But it was Steve Bannon on PBS who said that millennials are just 19th century Russian serfs, right? They're well fed, they're well clothed, they have more information than anybody in history, but they don't own anything, and they're not going to own anything. And the problem is that I think a lot of millennials have bought into the idea that the corruption, the corruption of capitalism historically, or crony capitalism, is a representation that owning something is inherently a bad thing. They don't realize that there is a side of this that Republicans do understand and often promote, where working hard, sacrificing for something until you build up something enough to have ownership and stake in it is actually a safeguard against tyranny, right? And Black people certainly don't understand that, partly because we've never really owned much.
And so how do you change that? How do you go about, if you are to win, how do you end up changing that in your community?
Well, I think I'm going to have to just bring a ministry of truth into the community, right? And I think there are going to be very drastic grassroots community initiatives that don't wait for the machine, the federal government, right? I wrote a letter to Tim Walz after the George Floyd incident, and I told him that the grandiosity of the federal government is undermining the meaning of community. Now I would add that the arrogance of globalism is undermining the value of country. So I see that my role as a congressperson is to go into a very corrupt DC amidst a very corrupt uniparty and just get ready for an old-fashioned knife fight, right? Now, if we take the House and the Senate and the executive branch here over the next 2 years, 2022, 2024, then there'll be a real inter-party battle about whether we're going to be a nationalist party or a sort of rhino neocon globalist party. And that's kind of the fight that's happening in the Democratic Party right now, although they have the identity politics that hold them together and the aspiration of globalism. So there's going to be a knife fight in D.C. no matter what I see. But what I can do is help illuminate how the global affects the local and be a leader in the community to say, guys, how are there all of these Black millionaires, billionaires, but there are no Black banks? We have no sovereignty. We have no Black sovereignty. We don't have a hand in the institutions that preside over us. And that's part of the reason why we are so prone to take a false promise from some Democratic candidate. And we have to address that first before the Black community comes online, let's say, into the American way, the American dream. We do have to sort ourselves out. And that's not to disregard anybody else. I just see that the ball and chain of the Black community is really weighing America down. And we have a very, very pernicious, tragic Black-on-Black crime problem. We have an abortion crisis, and Black people drive a lot of culture in this country. And it's, it's something that has to be addressed. And it's a part of, I say that, and it's a part of a wider view that the working class is going to have to take some damn control of this country, man.
Yeah,
right?
well,
They're going to have to.
They're trying in Canada, right?
Yeah.
They just got shut down, bank accounts frozen. Canada's in real trouble.
Well, they gave up their guns, so that's the problem.
Yeah, a lot of people over the past couple of days, a lot of conservative commentators have been saying this is what happens when you don't have a First Amendment. I suppose, but this is what happens when you don't have a Second Amendment.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
Because the government doesn't fear its people. The government should always fear its people. That's the way this whole thing was fucking set up in the West. And they don't anymore. I mean, we've got all of these politicians. Omar is one of them. Dan Crenshaw is one of them on the Republican side. And both the prime minister and the deputy prime minister in Canada, like major people all throughout the fucking world in leadership positions in the West who are beholden to this World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab bullshit. Do people not understand who this man is? His dad was the manager of Escher, Weiss, and C, right? That is the company that made the hydro turbines and the flamethrowers for the fucking Nazis.
Who is this?
Klaus Schwab, the guy that's the chair of the fucking World Economic Forum. These are evil, evil people that have been intent on global domination forever. They tried in the middle of the 20th century and couldn't do it by force. So now they're trying to do it by moralizing and brainwashing, and it's fucking working. Yeah. Pretty much everywhere. Australia, all over Europe, America, Canada. It's working everywhere.
Yeah, here in particular, I mean, dude, after this last election, it's clear that there is psychological warfare going on in this country. And, you're right, Royce, what you were saying earlier about people just reading the headlines. It's probably 90% of Americans. They don't actually take the time to read the rest of the article. You see a flashy headline, and it doesn't even matter what the news source is. They'll believe in it just because it was either passed on Facebook or Twitter or something else. A lot of these accounts are fake or they're bots, and you can't tell who's who because it's getting easier and easier to fake this type of stuff. With you, before you can even fight against Ilhan Omar, you've got to go up against two Republican candidates. What do you know about the people that you're up against? Cicely Davis is one of them, and there's another gentleman with a name that I cannot pronounce that you're up against in the primary. When is the primary, and what do you know about these candidates?
The primary, I believe, is in August. And I think the endorsement for the Republican Party is I want to say April, early April. And, I like CC Davis. I think that CC is saying all the right things. I just don't know if she has the stomach to make the sacrifices necessary. Right. Like I come from and the other one is Shakri and she's saying some of the right things as well. I have a skepticism of anybody who hasn't sacrificed something significant telling me that they're willing to sacrifice something significant. Right. You can't pump fake me. Right. And that's what we're going to try and articulate. And hopefully, with my stepping in and being a potentially very powerful candidate to go against Ilhan, not only Ilhan, but the machine and the narrative that the machine has built for the Democrats against the Republicans. Hopefully we get some I want to say some continuity in the GOP in our district. But regardless, right? Like, I just don't know Cece. I don't know her history. I don't know Shakri's history. I don't think they have much of a real history. My history is that when the NBA got me behind closed doors in 2012, I was already talking about psychological crisis, mental health crisis. I was already talking about globalism, right? A lot, and this is funny. I said this the other day, and you guys will understand this because, I know you guys love sports. 10 years ago, right, when I came on the scene and said, wait a second, guys, we don't even have a mental health policy in this league, but we got we have a banned substance list. We take tax dollars, we build arenas with parking structures. We sell alcohol to the fourth quarter, and we incentivize people to bring their kid to the game, get drunk, yell shit, get in the car with their kid and drive under the influence, right? Economically, we incentivize that. And I'm saying, hold on, guys, the moral. And people and Republican, beer drinking, NBA fanatics came out in troves and said, the NBA doesn't have to care about mental health. They're a business. They're there to make money. They're there to make money. Why do they have to care about those issues? That's not that they're a business first, right? They weren't talking about globalism or corporatocracy or China. This is a new phenomenon. So I think the Republican Party is changing, and I think the basis, focus, and the issues are changing. And I think that I can speak to those issues having had credibility and really fighting back against the establishment before your common citizen even knew who the establishment was. I was saying back then, this guy, David Stern, rest in peace, Adam Silk, these people only care about money. And even more so, they only care about power. And as such, it shouldn't shock us that they would be in the pocket of Xi Jinping and the CCP. This sort of kind of shocked people like, man, I can't believe the NBA would sell out to China. It's like, if you knew them, if you were listening back then, you would know. So, that's my take on it is, I gave up couple $100 million to fight against the status quo and the establishment. And I just don't know these other candidates. And I would say the same of many candidates across the country, not even just in this race.
Yeah, and you were one of the first athletes to come out about mental health. Obviously, your own experiences with anxiety disorder made headlines at the time. Now it seems like commonplace, but it seemed like you were ostracized back then for what is happening literally every 2 minutes in the Olympics, with every athlete falling down the mountain. Looking back on it now, with, in particular, I guess, Simone Biles, she was, a big proponent of it. Looking back at it now, do you feel like screaming in these people's faces and just being like, dude, I tried to tell you this 10 years ago.
You don't want to be the
you
first,
weren't listening.
You don't want to be the first motherfucker to do anything.
Yeah, I guess not. Unless you're winning the lottery.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. The first one through the door catches the round. But I would say this. The mental health is still a very sensitive topic for me because I understand how mental health and the psychological has a horizon way beyond the short term, right? Like, it's hard to even talk about mental health in a Simone Biles context because when I was trying to talk about mental health and as I've evolved in trying to talk about mental health as a general topic, I try and tell people that mental health is another way to say the human condition, right? Where mind, body, and spirit converge into this perceivable existence. Simone Biles was talking about her anxiety on that day at that time in that context of her competing and just what was going on in her life. I don't really talk in those terms. I'll say this, looking back, I certainly see how, in a mental health sense, the subconscious maybe, or maybe directly, I'm not sure, of the corporatocracy was to shy away from a full-throated mental health conversation because they already had plans to be predatory around human psychology.
Yeah.
The rise of social media has been one of the most predatory psychological endeavors in human history. So, of course, in 2012, it was easy for them to write me off as, hey, that's the kid that can't fly. Ha ha, let's tell a joke because he should be able to just smoke some weed, drink some wine, take a Xanax, get on the plane and do what he has to do in order to make millions of dollars, irregardless of the implications of his overall health, right? And so you can sort of see in that example how everything we've seen come to fruition now in our modern day when it comes to the five-headed hydra, let's say, of the NWO, where you got central banks, which is big corporations, right? Big tech. In the three industrial complexes, media, military, and medicine, they were all at the table then. And they were all putting their token in to say, write this kid off. We don't need to talk about mental. Even the drug companies, Eli and Lilly, they were all in the room back then, right? And I was sitting there telling all, you guys are heretics, really is what it is. They have no faith. They have no faith. And the problem with them not having faith, not that anybody being atheist or having a certain faith is a problem, but the problem with them not having a faith is their faith became money. Their faith became power. Their faith became external validation. And they operate in that modality. And me, I grew up a Christian. I grew up a Catholic. So my integrity has never been about money. It's never been about external validation. That's why I can walk around with a set of balls. My balls come from a Christian faith, as ironic as that may sound. But no, it's serious because when I was in the room with these oligarchs, it became clear to me that these people are in a crisis themselves, actually, right? They don't see how bereft they are of any joy or fulfillment. So, sometimes I watch the TV and I go, Kevin Love gets an Arthur Ashe Award from ESPN for mental health 4 years after I talk about it. I'm like, you guys serious? But, that's as far as it goes, really.
Yeah, I was always curious about it because, again, to me, you were one of the first people, and everybody just kind of dismissed it. Now everybody champions it, and they're like, "Oh my God, she's so brave. She's so brave."
Well, it's kind of like the Trump thing too. He, like you said, Republicans have this. I don't even know what the fuck you call it. It's part of the political establishment to go at each other, but not go too hard, right? Because what my opinion is that patricians, the authoritarian class, the ruling class, will always protect their collective authority before they protect any individual ideology or person or group, right? It's us first. As long as it's like the Roman Senate. They may debate about how you should handle the problems of hunger and governance and war, but they'll never fucking bring plebs into the Senate. First guy that did that was Julius Caesar, and they fucking stabbed him for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. That's the difference we're seeing now. All these people that have populist ideologies are getting involved in politics, and it is pissing people off. Mitch McConnell, that turtle-looking motherfucker, couldn't be more angry. You can just see his jowls flapping every time he gets on fucking camera. And I'm like, oh, fucking, we got to be respectful in the Senate. Fuck the goddamn respect. I want results, bitch.
Yeah.
You've been in politics for 50 years. What do I get out of that? Out of the millions of dollars we've paid you in salary over the last 40 years or so he's been in office, in various offices, what have we gotten out of that exactly? Nothing is the answer. Nothing. But I mean, what the fuck?
Nothing.
A lump of coal.
Yeah.
Actually, you've gotten debt out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's only it's only 30 trillion.
Yeah, 30. Who cares now? At 30 trillion, who cares? That's too high for anybody to count. Speaking of money, look, funding for these campaigns is a big, big piece of this puzzle. Have you heard from anybody today since your announcement about reaching out for funding? Because the Democrats and Ilhan Omar have a ton of it. And I'm sure you've been warned about what you're up against. Has anybody reached out regarding funding today?
Yeah, I mean, the money's already coming in. But prior to this, when I was having preliminary conversations about running and just kind of floating it out there that I was thinking about running, a lot of people, said that they would support. So now that we've officially launched today, I haven't circled back to have all those conversations. But what is obvious is that big money, like you just said, is constrained in the authoritarian class. And there's always a quid pro quo. And the American citizen has to get wise to this. And they also have to get wise to where money is being spent and how the money that's being spent to buy politicians is influencing their everyday opinion. And that's an educational piece, right? There's sort of three American American industries that are kept from the public school education. It's finance, law, and when I say public school, I mean formative years, K through 12.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can pay a lot of money to go to get your law degree and things like that. But in your formative years, you got finance, law, and politics, right? Those are the three sort of industries that are kind of kept away from you in a K through 12. And then they make you be an elite, sort of affluent, sort of semi-wealthy, or go into debt to go and get,
the people
kind of acquainted with those.
The people that get involved in politics early in school and shit like that, they end up as speech writers and staffers, not as actual politicians.
That's
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a whole different fucking thing than being the person who holds the office.
Yeah.
Which you're not.
But we believe that there is a constituency out there of people who have access to capital who still believe in some of the founding principles of this country. And as small as they may be, as much of a minority as they may be, we can mobilize the resources if we stick together in the populist movement and fight back. And it's going to be a war of attrition, right? Like this isn't going to happen overnight. But I think the intuition and the impetus is already there, and you're starting to see people pop on with podcasts like your own, even Rogan, and there's other people as well. You're seeing the medical community start to fight back with these doctors who have divergent opinions from the establishment. You're seeing it in sports, right? You got your Kyrie Irvings and Aaron Rodgers. So all around the board, all across the board, you're having this minority step up, and we're seeing that it causes a lot of problems for the establishment and the narrative. So, I'm not concerned about the money. It'll come, but what I'm bringing is a ministry of truth. And there is an infinite amount of wealth in that alone.
Yeah, it's hard to fight. It's hard to fight back against the truth. And I think that's the toughest thing for you is now going to be raising funds. I think it's going to be getting black people, the black community, to believe that the Constitution works, that the system of government works. It's just that you weren't allowed to participate in it. That isn't evidence that it doesn't work. That's evidence that there are fucking bad actors who are gatekeepers to this system. And they have to be done away with in whatever means necessary to get them the fuck out of the way. Like, being disallowed participation isn't a sign that there's no intrinsic value in the system itself. It's that there are assholes in your fucking way. And even
this is an interesting thing too for black people to realize. Like, I believe in the Constitution. I believe that if you don't have a faith, you better sure as hell have a constitution, right? If you have a constitutionalist, atheist, pagan society, you got Sodom and Gomorrah, basically. You got a shit show. And we're on our way there for sure. But here's what black people don't realize about the Constitution. It is a self-perfecting document, because the entire argument to correct or amend the Constitution was based on the words in the Constitution, right? That all men were created equal. That was the which is a biblical claim as well. And the Constitution was largely contributed to by guys like St. Thomas Aquinas and other Catholic theologians, but that's another conversation. But the all men are created equal was how we got the Civil Rights Act done and how we, got out of slavery and things like that. But once you account for the 3/5 of human, caveat in the Constitution, it becomes an incredible document, and it is self-perfecting. And it is intended to put the constraint on power. What I see, and part of the reason why I've decided to run, is that there is a monopolization, like you said, of the authoritarian class that sort of that conspires between all three branches of power to, push back on each other for their own interests, but never in the interest of the greater populace. And so that's something that we have to address. And we can only do that by running for office and trying to break into that class of people.
I agree. And, with you having gone what you went through with the NBA in particular, you're no stranger to criticism. I don't know if you've read some of the articles that are already out that are trying to bury you already today in like the Star Tribune with the civil courts proceedings and the 6 active judgments and all that other stuff about what you did in 2009, assaulting.
Well, that's what they always do, right?
They always do it.
If a black, especially if a black dude is involved in anything, the first thing they do is go try to fucking dig up shit on him.
Yeah, but it was funny. So instant. You just announced, though, today.
No. Listen to this. I'm going to tell you guys a story, because this is part of it. This is part of what the new politicians have to do. And I think this is why it's so important that black men run. And I think the GOP is really the landing spot for us at this moment in history. And again, my reason for being with the GOP is primarily because I'm Christian. And the left's idea is something like the Bible and Jesus Christ are homophobic, sexist, misogynist, racist, and anti-Semitic. So I just can't be a Democrat today at all as a Christian. But here's something that I'll tell you as a story of today already. I'm at the Federal Reserve. We didn't call all of the media. We didn't want to have a big press conference, partly because there's a goddamn blizzard that just hit today, but also because we knew if we preemptively told too many people that it allowed the chance for there to be a lot of chaos and trouble, right? And so that wasn't our goal for today. We wanted to make an announcement. We wanted the historical record to show that we made the announcement outside of the Federal Reserve for a very specific reason, because we're on to the grift. And so the Star Tribune was the one there to kind of capture this story and to report this first story. And I go through this interview and I'm just saying, you know, all of the things. They take 3 quotes from me, right? And I actually, this is the crazy part about it. Out of all the people who covered me, this is kind of the first time where the first 3/4 of this Star Tribune article are pretty goddamn accurate. I actually tweeted and told the Star Trib, I actually appreciate you guys giving me credit for being an early advocate of mental health, because if you go back in time, there were Star Tribune writers, and that's our local paper in Minneapolis, for those who don't know, maybe listen. There were times where they wouldn't give me credit for being a mental health advocate. They were saying, you're too smart for your own good. This is not your cause to take up. You need to focus on basketball. You need to be more. They were promulgating that idea. So I actually appreciated the accuracy in the first 3/4. But here's what I mean about liberal racism. You got a bunch of white liberals and their coalition of intersectionality, the Church of LGBTQ, and they want to use the history of Black people, this 400-year slavery and then segregation, Jim Crow, and all of these, you know, all these Black plights to kind of be the torchbearer of why they get to say what America should be, right? The real claim for Black people in this country is that we gave 400 years of uncompensated labor. And now there's a $30 trillion debt, and you guys are debt shaming Black men. You guys, I gave up $200 million to say something genuine and honest on behalf of all people, common people, against $1 billion corporation. The first thing the corporations do is cut your water off. We see it with all of these people who are trying to be truth tellers now.
Well, now they cut your bank account off if you're in Canada.
Back then they didn't do it. They weren't that bold, but now they're doing that for sure. But my point is to watch the liberal establishment, and now you're going to be able to see liberal woke, you know, individuals debt shame Black guys. I mean, it just shows you that they don't give a shit about Black people. It's never been about Black people. And my campaign is going to help illuminate that and let the record show. Let the record show that the Star Tribune thought it pertinent to mention that I have, you know, a few like people tried to sue me or something. Like, it's not even a lot of money. It's like $100,000, right? It's like there's people trying to sue the people who give them money to an Ilhan Omar. They're suing them for $50 million. And have won for malpractice and all kinds of things. So, you know, it's going to be a fun campaign, because for me, I like when I'm able to participate in people getting a better clear of the truth, a better look at the truth, a better scope of the truth. And this is going to be one of those campaigns. You guys don't like straight heterosexual Black men.
Well, look, we're looking forward to it. I hope you can pull it off, because God knows we hate her. The popularity and the name behind her, though, it's a lot to overcome. But at least you're willing to take up the fight. And again, you know, you're no stranger to criticism, so this should be easy for you. This is the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to? Drinkin'
Bro of the Week, I'd like to give it to Muhammad Ali. Right, Muhammad Ali is one of those characters who is a motif that is good to use for anybody who's saying an uncomfortable truth at a very unpopular time.
And willing to pay a price for saying the truth, too.
Willing to pay the price, self-sacrifice. So I got to give it to Muhammad Ali. Yeah, man, he's one of my icons. He's somebody that I still look up to a lot and try and emulate as an athlete who is politically active.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, look, we wish you the best of luck. It looked cold out there today, by the way. That Tribune picture they used of you.
It feels like it's like -30 or some shit now, I think.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
My God, it looked freezing out there.
Look, the blizzard is here. You know, we expect snow until mid-May in Minnesota. So.
Well, that's why you built a baseball stadium that doesn't have a dome. What the fuck were they thinking?
Absurd.
That's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. How does a baseball game get snowed out?
Hey, I wasn't in charge of the tax dollars at that time, so don't blame me.
Well, hopefully you will be this time. Yeah. Royce White, where can everybody find you and help you on the campaign trail?
RoyceWhite.us. That's the campaign website. And we have a donation platform there. Also, you can visit me on Substack, Royce White official Substack. And I got a number of open letters there to a lot of these institutions and speaks on a lot of these topics we talked about today.
Awesome. We appreciate you being here. Best of luck on the campaign. For D'Anthony Holloway, Royce White, I am Ross Patterson. We are the Drinkin' Bros Podcast. Good night.